You're here. I am Katrina Van Huss. I'm the founder of Turnkey for Good, and I'm here with four people, three other people today. I made four. Um, that I think we're going to have a really fun conversation. We're going to talk about boards and how to get the best out of them by eliminating some of the most common problems. So, the first person we have with us is Marie Forbes. Marie and I go back a long way. She's the last person who ever fired me. And I'm just like on this call. But you're going to have to buy Anne Marie many drinks to get that out of her. Me, I trip and fall and it comes out. So, anyway, it's a good story. And then we have Robert Wolf, who is the founder of ZEC. And Robert is Anne Marie and Robert and Trey are sort of the two sides of coin. Trey is runs everything important role at ZEC, Trey Muscola. So
yeah, I'd try for sure.
pretty cool. That's a pretty cool role. I like that. And based on what I know about Robert, that includes the espresso machine.
That's right. That's my most important work.
Wow. I like that. All right. So let me frame this conversation up. So we've got two sides of the same coin here. Anne Marie is going to address the human side of board dysfunction. And Robert and Trey are going to address the technology side of board dysfunction. I'm a real believer that technology will not save us if the humans aren't prepared to be saved. The technology rope will bounce off their hands and you will still drown unless the humans are ready to grab the rope. So we're going to talk about both those things. Anne Marie, I'm going to go to you first, if that's all right.
Sure.
So one of the things that we've seen over the years, I've been doing this 34 years, and I think you and I are neck and neck for, yes, that's enough talk about that. Strategic plans and board functions, sometimes they get disconnected. So tell me, in your world and in your experience, how do you keep the board focused on the strategic plan and going in that direction?
Well, first of all, hi, everyone. Boards get disconnected from the strategic plan when they don't see themselves in it, when they don't have an actual role in your strategic pillars or in the tactics that have been selected to move those activities forward. So I found in my experience that they are far more engaged in developing the strategic plan if they understand the staff role and what activities the staff will be doing and measuring that the board will monitor on a dashboard. And what are they going to do? So if you have a public awareness pillar, what does the board do to help with that? And one easy fix is that each board member finds you a speaking engagement. All of a sudden, it becomes very actionable and they see themselves in the strategic plan, building awareness about your organization. Their job is to get you the speaking engagement unless they happen to be trained to do that. But the bottom line is they have to see themselves in it. They have to see and understand their role in monitoring and measuring. And they have to understand this is not a document we put on the shelf. This is a living, breathing organism where we may have to be nimble. And the CEO or executive director brings it back to say, hey, something flew into our orbit that might be more important than what we thought was 2 years ago. Let's talk about it. It doesn't mean we add something. It means we may take away. And the board has to be brave enough, nimble enough, strategic enough to say, what just flew in our orbit, we see how that moves us forward. But they have to see themselves in it.
So, Anne Marie, I give, just for the audience, I give these guys the questions sort of ahead of time, but then we're always going to take a left. And I want to take a left. So many people in the audience will be from the bigs. I've got a board that is, people who were recruited potentially for finance sake and maybe not for their professional skills. And then on the other end of the spectrum, I have people who are literally the staff of the nonprofit. How would you address what you're saying to each of those two kinds? And then there's that weird bird in the middle where, half the board is engaged operationally and half's not.
Yeah. So to the bigs, I would say the reason those board members are on your board is because they have connections. And so dream big. What are those big connections they have that uniquely they have where they can see themselves in your plan? So if you have, the chief strategist for a Fortune 500 company, they can connect you with some amazing resources, but they have to see and be asked. For the smalls, your board members are just looking for ways to make a difference. They know you're working 20 hours a day, and what little thing can they do that will make a big impact? And believe me, them getting you as a speaker at the Rotary to share your mission, them getting you a speaking engagement at a physician conference that aligns with your mission or a free booth makes a difference. We just have to put it in the plan. We have to be brave enough to break it down and put it in the plan so we know we're working on it.
So you're saying use the board member using their own personal social status to get a speaking engagement makes them suddenly very interested in where the organization is actually going. It's just a way to make them pay attention because they put themselves at risk a little bit, right?
Yeah, they do the same with their role in fundraising,
Yeah.
right? If
Okay.
if your board is selling tables for a gala, then are they? And are we measuring it? If that's an expectation, I'm not saying it is everywhere, but a strategic plan is looking at the big picture through those pillars. And it's also in your operational plan looking at the tactics to achieve it. And if the board does not see themselves or recognize how they can impact it, then why are they there?
Got it.
Right? They have to see a role for themselves in your plan.
All right. Very good. I'm going to go to the second fix, and that is it takes a tremendous amount of staff time typically to prepare for a board meeting. And Robert, I'm going to go to you. We're going to see some technology in a few minutes, but Robert, you had an experience that I think you and a compatriot of yours decided we got to fix this. What was the experience that you had?
Well, and it relates so much to what Anne Marie was talking about. So at our first two companies, it took our team 100 hours to build the board deck. It was monumentally stressful. We had no map. We didn't know what to include in it.
And
So,
which were those two companies, Robert, just to give people an idea of scale?
so the first company is called Moose Jaw. We were acquired by Walmart, so we had a real board. The second company where Trey and I worked at together is called CrowdRise. We were acquired by GoFundMe. So
Okay.
same situation. We had these amazing VCs on our board. We would spend these 100 hours building the board presentation. We would send it to the board 3 days before the board meeting. They would presumably read it, only for us to get into the boardroom and reread it to them. So it was not only was it stressful, it was a monumental waste of time for everyone. We didn't realize that this angst was universal until after our companies were acquired and we got out there and started serving on boards. And I love one of the points that Anne Marie made, because I've been on the board of a nonprofit for about 5 years. And we've been using PowerPoint and had that same experience that I just described. I would go into the board meeting and for 3 hours have slides that I already read back to me. As a board member, I never once had a to-do. They never asked me to do anything. We actually switched to Zach, which is more of an engagement platform that drives collaboration. Now we go into the board meeting and it's all strategic. It's all banter. The board members actually take ownership. And it's not only is it better for the organization, it's way more fun. So I think, Anne Marie, your idea of engaging board members, asking them to take on tasks to help the organization, it's so important, not only for the organization, but also for the board to have them feel more involved than just donating money.
Very nice. Excellent. All right. So Anne Marie, in the absence of an engagement tool, because not everybody's going to have one, and it in and of itself will not solve the problem, how do you address that? The inordinate amount of time staff spends preparing for a meeting, and then the staff or the board members don't actually read it beforehand.
Yeah. I will never forget a board member of mine named Mary, because during one of my performance reviews, I brought up this issue. She goes, "What's your greatest frustration?" I said, "Why don't you guys read what I send you? And she said, you are going to have to get over yourself. And I, okay. And she said, we work full time. If you need us to do something, then you have to either package it, call us, meet with us. It is on you to remind us in some way, shape, or form, because it's what you do all day long. It is not what we do all day long. And so it fundamentally changed how I interacted with my board. Because first of all, I had let my little CEO ego get in the way that somehow it was, they were deliberately not preparing. And so I had to realize, okay, what ways can I make this where they want to interact? They want to see the latest. They want to. And we then insisted on having a strategic topic on every agenda. Get over the business as fast as we possibly can. Consent agenda, a tool like Zach. What can we do fast? We're still doing what we need to do from a governance perspective. But then what discussion moves us forward as an organization? What information do they need in advance to prepare? Do I have any subject matter experts on my staff or in the community that are going to present? And then let them talk strategically, big picture about what it is. And man, does board attendance shoot up and engagement increase, because they're doing what we recruited them to do, which is make a difference and use their brains.
Interesting. Robert, go ahead.
Yeah, just one additional related note. At our first company, the shortest deck we ever sent to our board was 134 pages.
Wow.
We didn't know what to include, so we included everything. We wanted to look pro in front of our board. That was a mistake. I used to get upset with our board because they didn't read everything. It was actually my fault, because the notion that I would send them a 134-page deck 2.5, 3 days before the board meeting and expect them to consume it all wasn't their fault. It was my fault. And they couldn't even read these men and women were on planes and in Ubers, and they couldn't read it on their phone because it was not responsive. So I feel like I didn't understand that it was my responsibility. Sort of, I was the same as you, Anne Marie. Someone needed to say to me, "Hey, it's not the board's problem; it's your problem. Get them something that's valuable to them." Took me a long time to figure that out.
Yeah, Marshall McLuhan is a famous communications philosopher almost, and he always put forth a million years ago when I got a journalism degree, put forth, the burden of communications on the communicator. So you're right. It's not that they don't want to understand; it's that we can't understand it for them.
Right.
But it's up to us.
I think Mark Twain said something like, "If I had more time, I would write you a shorter note."
Yes.
Right?
I love that.
It's hard to write concisely, but you have to surface the information to your board that they're going to care about most, so that they are able to help you.
Yep. Trey, you're looking very fine in your corner there. And I know you're going to talk a lot later when we actually look at the software, but feel free to jump in at any point too, because I know you've got some experience on these matters.
I'll for sure interrupt Robert only. I will let you speak. Yes, I will. Thank you.
Everyone needs a friend like that.
Yeah.
Really. What you're saying echoes my own experience. As I stepped down from the CEO role and step back a little bit, I've been able to test some of my own theories by volunteering in a very small nonprofit, 2.5 people, staff. And I'm having exactly the same problems with this board, exactly the same problems. It seems like it is totally a human problem and not a scale problem. It's the same at every level. You can't get smaller than us. And it's exactly what you're describing. All right. So let's move on. The humans, they're not engaged, Anne Marie. They're just not leaned in. What do we do? How do we get them more engaged and moving?
Yeah. So first of all, I want to we should answer Scott's question.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
so Scott, the engagement tool Robert mentioned is ZEC, and you're going to actually get to see some more about that in just a little bit. So I truly believe if board members aren't engaged, it's because or they're uninvolved, underinvolved, or an absentee, right? That each person is unique and different, and we have a responsibility as the CEOs or EDs to figure that out. And is the lack of engagement a true misalignment of the mission? They got in, realized this is not my thing, and they don't know how to get out. And our job is to give people graceful outs. We can't do that if we don't have a relationship with each person. Okay. Under involved, that's on us, right? That's on us. A lack of engagement, if they are aligned with the mission, is on us. And so, one of the things I recommend, and if you can do this with your board chair or your governance chair, wonderful. If not, the CEO or ED can do it. And that's one on one meetings once a year to really assemble a portfolio for that board member. What program are they going to attend? What fundraising event are they going to attend? Give them the date of the board retreat. Anything that is an expectation. What speaking engagements are they going to line up? Are they going to go to the National Health Conference with you? What is it that we are asking of them? And what can they uniquely do for the organization that no one else can do? Because that's why we recruited them. If I don't uniquely know Trey's talents, I just recruited him, well, then that's on me. But if I find out that Trey has this magical way of engaging people on social media because of how he tells a story, then I need to ask him to use that. Again, when we ask people to use the talents that they were recruited for, and then we give them everything they need to do it, engagement goes up. Now, if it still doesn't, then that's a different conversation. That's a matter of time or interest or, something. And we just have to be honest and talk about it.
Hey, Anne-Marie, could you maybe role play an offboarding that's out of cycle as gracefully done as possible for someone who is, let's say, simply does not have the bandwidth in their life to do this right now?
Sure. Are you the person?
Yes, make me the person.
Okay. So Katrina, how are you today?
I'm great, thank you.
I am so glad we found a moment because I know you are swamped.
This is a fact.
It since you came on the board 3 years ago, you have brought so much to us. But I've noticed in the last 7 months that your life is it's crammed full. So I want you to feel comfortable sharing with me how you feel about board service right now, because we have things we want you to do, but if you can't, I understand. I still respect and admire you. But what's going on and how are you feeling about it?
Anne-Marie, work has ramped. I've got some family health problems. They've ramped. I feel terribly guilty. I really want to do this, but I got to say, I'm not sure how it's going to work out on my end of the stick.
So, are you interested in taking a leave of absence, or do you want to take a break as a board member and we can circle back in a year or two when some things might change?
Now I'm going to pretend I'm not the utterly oblivious person I actually am. I'm going to be, no, I'm in, I've got it. And I would take your gracious offer of an out.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's really
Now,
well.
if the person is clueless, has no self-awareness, then and first of all, the ideal person to have this conversation is your governance chair or a board member. That is the ideal, right? You really want this to be volunteer to volunteer. There are times in some organizations where you might do it in partnership, but ideally, I've coached the board chair or the governance chair to have this conversation, because that is where that relationship should sit. If it doesn't happen, then the CEO sometimes has to have this conversation. It's
Right.
just a little more different.
Okay. We're going to transition to take a look at ZEC now, but I wanted to ask one question. It's actually related to one of the first couple of fixes that we talked about. So let's say we've given a board person a role, so that they're more in tune with the strategic plan. What happens if they go too far? Like suddenly they think they're in charge of finance. Like, I'm in charge of finance now because I got this thing. Well, how do you get them back in the box, so to speak? Like they've gone too far. They're telling staff what to do. They're asking to see payroll, things like that.
Yeah. So let me first of all say to Sean, Sean, I would never, even as the CEO, have that kind of conversation if my board chair wasn't on board. So my board chair is my partner in this. So that is critical. That is not a one-off. That is a governance committee has decided someone has to have this conversation. Okay, to Katrina's question, board members sometimes are doing that because they truly do not know their role. And so I'm a firm believer that before we can do the blame game, we have to look at ourselves and say, what kind of training and orientation did I provide? Did I really talk about the difference between management and operations role and a governance role? So let's look in the mirror and assume that the person just doesn't understand yet. So that is my pitch for everyone. Really should have governance training, if not every year, every other year, because you have new board members that come on and they deserve it. If this person has had training, is just still doing this, then again, this is when your board chair is your best partner and ally, unless it's your board chair. But in those weekly or biweekly conversations with the board chair to say, hey, I need your help. We got to figure out what to do with Gary because he's directing staff. I could really use your help redirecting him to me. I don't want him to feel beat up, but the reality is he can't be assigning work to my team, and he's assigning work to my team. So if the board chair says, hey, I think you should call Gary yourself, you've known him for years, then I'm going to say, can we do this together? Because again, this can be awkward, but sometimes they will abdicate and want you to have those difficult conversations. This is my other plug for having a governance committee. The governance committee is responsible for the health of the board, and they become the group that you can bring these kinds of things to. But if you don't have that, then you have to rely on good governance practices, training, and an honest but diplomatic conversation about, hey, bring that stuff to me. That's okay. I work for the board, but my people don't. So go ahead and bring them to me. I can share with you what we aren't doing and why. But it's very confusing to the staff when you go directly to them. And so I need your help. Most powerful words in the world. I need your help. Please come to me with that.
Love it. All right. So before we transition, let's say that you've got all these problems and you've managed them to the extent that you have been able to, but it's still hard. And you've decided to invest in a piece of software that you think is going to help. How do you get your board ready to accept this piece of software? Anne Marie.
I make it sound very exciting. I mean, this is it's a problem they have brought to me, right? When Mary said, get over yourself. It's your job to remind us, engage us, make this interesting. Then I can say, oh my gosh, we have a solution that is going to put everything you need in one place. No more going to this, no more going to that, no more attachments you can't find, no more, you can't open it on your phone. We have a great solution that we're going to try. We're going to try it for a year, and then we're going to evaluate it and see what you think.
I like it. All right.
Love it.
Robert and Trey, you're on.
Anne Marie probably did the best job of it.
Yes.
But Robert, yeah, you can chime in. I'll start sharing this.
I already gave a little bit of background why we decided to start Zach. At the end of the day, we're trying to flip the misery of the board meeting and make it significantly more valuable. I will say, just to frame it a little bit, and I'll go fast because Trey showing it will do more justice than me talking about it. But when we initially launched, we thought our primary value adds would be saving leadership teams time, because it just takes ages to put board decks together. And we're not talking 10% of your time. Now that we've launched Zec AI, we're talking about saving you 80, 90% of your time, and we'll show that to you. And also allowing you to send a superior presentation to your board. So to us, the idea that people are using PowerPoint or Google Slides that your board members cannot read on their phone is just insane. So we used to actually build Squarespace sites because that was the only way we could make these presentations mobile. But that took us ages. We had to hire a graphic designer to make it look good. Zec solves for that. Having said that, now that we have lots of nonprofits and real companies using the product, it's the collaboration and engagement that Anne Marie was talking about that's the real game changer. So Zec has really become a collaborative workspace as opposed to a flat presentation, so that the leadership team and the board can align prior to the board meeting so that these are significantly more productive. So I'll stop talking. Trey can show it. I will say that if Anne Marie was calming and reassuring, Trey will be frenetic and create lots of chaos, just so you're prepared.
Yeah, perfect intro. I'm assuming everybody can see this clearly, so let me know if I'm mistaken. But I'll go pretty fast through this. But what you're looking at now is a finished Zec. So this is ultimately what the team is creating.
Wait, I can't see it. I don't. Now
There you go.
Oh, I just hit stop too. Terrible. All right. Let me pull it back up here. All right, resharing. All good?
Actually, no. Yes.
There you go.
Now you're good.
All right, it's a little delay. But so this is a finished Zec. So this is what the team is creating, what you're actually building. And I'll show you the back end, how you actually make it, but kind of take you through the board experience first. And really what you're going to end up doing is sending out a single secure link. So instead of, we referenced earlier, but email with 30 attachments in it, or, if security matters at all, right? A PDF that once you send it, you lose control, right? It can get forwarded along. It's one single link. It'll contain all the information within it. And you have total control over who sees it. So it's a much more secure delivery method. But more importantly, this is going to be the board experience, right? Is they're going to get this ahead of time in advance of the meeting and be able to go through all of this content. And, we want them to do their pre-read. We want them to be able to go through the content, kind of calibrate a little bit. They can use this commenting feature, and they can do what I'm doing. They can scroll through this whole thing. That's totally fine. They can also use the navigation. So this will allow them to jump around a little bit, go to whatever section is most relevant, wherever that kind of expertise you recruited them for is. And once they're in here, this is what we're going to help you make, right? It's not a traditional PowerPoint or a PDF. We're looking at Axios, Medium, the Times. That's how people are reading and writing nowadays. So that's what we're going to help you make, is something a little bit more in line with this, because that's how people are going to consume it. It's more digestible, simpler to go. And I'll show really quickly. This is from Robert's previous company. You mentioned Moose Jaw, but this is a real deck that we used to use, right? It would be 100+ pages. I mean, they're super dense. Not only does this take forever to actually make, but when you send this to the board, this is the experience. And this is particularly what it looks like on mobile. But either way, it's tough to get through. They're really dense. Zec is totally responsive. So I can see this on mobile. I can see this on my tablet. It's really easy for the board to interact with. We have, I think 75% is the last stat I read, of our traffic coming in through mobile or a tablet. that's where people are interacting with this. So we want to make that a really good experience for them so that they can see it on their own and on the go, because they do have full-time jobs, right? We want to make it really easy to engage. And then the commenting feature is probably the most utilized piece of the platform. So again, the idea would be you kick this out a couple of days early and allow your board members to ask questions, dig in on this. And the board loves it because they can asynchronously start to provide feedback, get clarification, ask questions, whatever. So it's awesome for the board, but really this is for you all, right? As the leadership team of your org, because you're getting all of these questions now in advance. And so it completely changes the tone and the structure of the meeting from that kind of old school, hey, here's our materials, get into the room and regurgitate the deck, to, hey, here's what went down the last, quarter, month, whatever it is. The board will ask you questions. You'll answer them all before the meeting takes place. So when you're in the room, it moves past that like checkbox item where you're just kind of rehashing what happened. That's already been discussed, right? Questions asked and answered. Now it's way more strategic. It's more forward-looking and conversational. And I think that's what people really like the most, is the quality of the meeting has a drastic improvement. And it's also, we're showing really quickly, you can always do like a private message. So if there's anything sensitive here, employee stuff, or somebody wants to flag something, really easy to have a quick convo on the side. And then I'm also going to show you can get analytics in here as well. So, when we talk about board engagement, right, instead of guessing, we're going to have a real sense of it here, right? Who's looking at the materials in advance? How long are they spending? When's the last time they reviewed? And, obviously you can use this tool as you want. I personally like to be really upfront with the board. I like it when they know about this feature, because it will help you get the best version of your board member, right? It's going to help you bring that engagement to the forefront. And it just gives you the better sense of, conversation, going through all this content together. And then you'll also be able to see content engagement. So where are they spending time, right? What do they actually care about? And as you see these sections, you'll know right before the meeting, what do I need to be dialed in on as I'm building this stuff? Hey, it looks like these sections are really popular. You can kind of lean into that content versus some of the stuff at the bottom where maybe you can save yourself some prep time, right? Because if nobody's reviewing it, there's no reason for you to prepare that stuff. So really cool things that you can kind of learn over time. And then last thing on the publish side here would just be the read time and the linking. So for us, again, we want to make this concise, really engaging. And I think as a good general rule of thumb is board members are busy, right? So the easier we make this for them, the better. So instead of having over here an 11, 12, 13-minute read time, our best practices are going to have you at 2, 3, 4 minutes per section, keeping it concise, elevating the most important stuff. And what most folks do is they just use that read time as a prompt or as a forcing function. So if I hit 5 or 6 minutes, I have to go back and I have to start cutting material, right? I have to prioritize what I'm going to talk about. The other way you can do it is to use this linking system. So I'm pulling out what you need to know, the highlights, the lowlights, etc. If I have a board member who wants to go deep on this stuff, that's all good. I can totally include all of that information, the spreadsheets, the studies, whatever it is, but I can link to it. So now they don't have to scroll to page 341 of the appendix. You're also not force feeding that into the meeting and kind of making everybody review. Really, really easy. When I'm done with it, I X out and I'm right back to where I started. So super simple to kind of go in and out of the information.
Hey, Trey, question. Can ZEC be used for both board and committee and other breakout meetings? How would you manage that?
Yeah, for sure. So you can use this for certainly board meetings is our bread and butter, but committee meetings, stakeholder updates. We've had people use this for fundraising. So I'm jumping around a little bit, but this is kind of the homepage. So over on the left are some pretty standard use cases for us, some of the stuff we just mentioned. And then on the right, each one of these tiles basically represents like its own meeting, right? And it contains all the content within. You set the ability to view those meetings individually. So if I'm a board member, this is going to be my hub, my source of truth. I can see Q1, Q2, Q3, whatever that is, right? My bylaws, whatever you want to store in here and give access to. If I'm on a committee, I'll see that committee meeting as well. If I'm not on that particular committee, you don't necessarily have to expose that to the other board members. But you can use this for, as many different kind of scenarios as you want.
Wow. Okay, I got to show you something. Don't stay right there.
Yeah.
So this is my little tiny nonprofit I was telling you about. This is the paperwork from our last meeting.
Wow.
I brought home, and I will never read, but I feel guilty, so I won't throw it away either. But to your point, this is beautiful. I'm amazed at how first to market you are. There seem to be so few tools to address this specific problem that it's pretty exciting for us. Anne-Marie, what are you seeing?
Oh, this is the time I wish I could time travel back to when I was a CEO. Because this was what they wanted and asked for. I think the CEO has to be willing to still make judgment calls, right? Like you want those 2-minute reads, 3-minute reads. Just because you can link to 40 things, should you link to 40 things? The way we help board members prioritize and govern and manage at the level they should is by the links and the choices we provide. Again, sharing that with the appropriate officers to make sure that they feel like we're giving enough. But we still have to make choices. But this certainly packages it in a way that becomes very engaging.
So Trey, we had a question from Scott Redfern, and it's for both you and Anne-Marie. He asked, what are your thoughts about refresher training for members of the board to keep them mindful of rules and regulations? And so Anne-Marie, yes or no on their training? I'm assuming it's a yes.
Yeah, and I read it as roles and responsibilities,
You're probably
or
right.
rules of the road, but it could be all of those things.
Yeah.
I am a firm believer that if we aren't getting what we want from a board, it's because we haven't repeated it enough, and or put it in a way that or in a format that is engaging, informative, and so I'm all for reinforcement, and I actually think if you're filling out your 990 and you're being truthful and you're providing governance training, then you are doing some of these things every year.
And Trey, speaking of reinforcement, is there a way to reinforce in the platform like this is how we operate as a board?
Yeah, I think any communication you're making to your board or key stakeholders, you can put into Zec so that you can monitor if it's being reviewed, you can interact with it, ask questions. So, we see literally every type of communication go out to the board from Zec. So if it's a training, if it's a meeting, if it's an in-between update, all of that's applicable here and useful for sure.
And so I'm guessing that a board member can dial up or down the notifications by email, push, or in-app.
Yeah, exactly. And we let you as like the organization, you'll control what notifications and that kind of stuff that the board is actually receiving. You're going to be in charge of distributing and that. There's really almost no automated notes that go out from the platform. Like you are in total control of what your board's going to experience for sure.
And Anne-Marie, back to you. So we got our strategic plan, right? And in my experience, sometimes we just don't stay close enough to it. Is there a way to use this platform to have the strategic plan as the bones of what we do each time? And how might you approach that as opposed to mentally?
Yeah, I see two things. First of all, having the strategic pillars in front of everyone all the time reminds them why we exist, right? You've got your mission statement, your vision statement, and then what are your strategic pillars? What are those 3 to 5 things that you and that the board is holding up as this is the primary function of what we do? And so having those with the key activities below that you're monitoring, the dashboard, what are the key activities that you're measuring and watching? That's a very visual thing, and this is the perfect kind of platform to show that dashboard on an ongoing basis.
Very good.
Perfect.
All right, we interrupted your demo. Please keep going.
No, for the best, always. It gave me a perfect chance to come read this comment from Scott about how to get things set up, which couldn't have paid for a better question because I'll show that really quickly. So the screen I'm on now is the editor. So this is where you're actually building this kind of stuff. And I'll kind of just jump into a new section so you can see like how it actually you interact with it. But Zec is essentially a text editor. So, it's typing, it's super simple to get started. And we'll go with like text. And you saw some of those old decks that we used to create, but part of this is we'd spend 100 hours building a deck and then another 30 hours on making it look nice and the formatting and consistency. that part can totally be solved. So there's a brand kit, it's applied automatically. There's guardrails for the fonts, the margins, all of that kind of stuff as we're in here. So you're going way faster because you don't have to worry about designing this, right? You just put the information in. We'll make sure it looks professional. We'll also make sure it looks consistent from meeting to meeting, from section to section. And that's how we're able to make sure that it looks really good on mobile, tablet, and all of that. So let's just say, so we can type directly into the system. That's super simple. And then whenever I'm ready to add like existing reports, content, whatever it is, it's all from this menu. So everything is click of a button style. If there's, let's say it's a video from a recent event, whatever it is, that automatically embeds into the system. Really simple. If I want to start putting in some financials, some projections, that kind of thing, I can do that a couple different ways. But if you have Excel, you'll connect it through OneDrive. If you have Google Sheets, you'll be able to pipe that information directly in. So I can come into here. Oops. I'll be able to pick my sheet that I want to bring in. And then from within there, I can pick a tab, do a named range, whatever it is, that'll pipe in. And you'll be able to sync this back to the source. So it's really easy to update it as you make changes or as last second donations or whatever it is come in. It's going to be responsive. So this will still look really awesome on your phone. And then you can always add like an image, right? So if you have a table, a chart, you're getting some kind of output, from your donor management or whatever that you want to display. Super simple to take a screenshot. You can copy and paste it in. You can save it as an image and drop it, but really quite quick there. And then for that linking system I showed, again, it's all a click of a button. So I can link out, I can send someone to a LinkedIn profile or, an article that I read that's interesting. I can also link within a section. That's how I kind of create that effect where I'm pulling things up from the appendix so that I can keep my main sections really tight and concise. And then we talked a little bit about the attachment problem, but you can always add, raw material. So if it's an Excel file, if it's a scientific study on some of the things that you're working with, really simple to just add those in. And instead of sending out, a massive email with 19 attachments, it's still just one link. There's no size issues. And then I can put these attachments anywhere within the presentation. So now all of these extra materials are stored in the section they belong in, supporting the material that they're around, and it's organized and stored like this, right? So as a board member, I can come back, all this stuff is in one place. And then it's for sure worth showing the AI really quickly. So as I come in here, I'll just show you guys how this works. So I'm going to generate this and it'll optimize it. But you saw what I put in, right? Literally, I think I wrote one line. Everything else was existing material. So I put in 2 tables and charts and then 1 screenshot. AI is basically going to take you from the author of this to an editor. So the hardest part of all this is you're looking at raw data, you're synthesizing, you're trying to kind of look at a blank page and create the entire narrative from scratch. This will do that work for you. So it'll look at your tables, whether there's 1, 2, 3, it'll be able to recognize trends. So, positive increases, a negative increase, it'll know if those things are good or bad. And then it'll also be able to, I put that screenshot in, it can read an image as well. So it doesn't matter how you get the information in, it'll be able to process that. And again, it'll kind of recognize all these things and break it out into a system for you. So it's going to say, hey, here are the biggest takeaways, what you need to know. And then it's also going to give you highlights, right? The good stuff that's happening, lowlights, the bad stuff that's happening, key initiatives, etc. And again, for me, I think the biggest help here is that you're no longer having to go from scratch. It's going to give you your first draft of this. And this is, some version of what will come out. But I certainly didn't put like a single statistic in here. It's able to read all of that, determine if it's a good thing or a bad thing, provide some initiatives. And then as I get down here, it'll put takeaways from the actual supporting materials as well. So really, really cool. It's obviously a huge time saver, but just to be really clear, you can still edit everything. So, you'll do a review, maybe instead of highlights, it's good stuff, whatever you want to call it. If, I'm looking down here and this isn't actually that bad because it's on plan, I can get rid of stuff. If I want to add some more, good things in here, easy to add. Oops.
I'll just, as Trey's talking, or typing, I'll just add that not only is this a massive time saver, to me, the even cooler part is the content that it generates is smarter than any person can write. So not only is it awesome for the leadership team, it's amazing for the board because it concisely surfaces the information that the board will care about most, literally without you having to do any work. So we've been working on this for quite a while. We had a lot of companies, I think 75 companies in beta. but it actually just went live yesterday.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's we're pretty psyched about the opportunities around AI, and this is just V1, so we're really just getting started.
I think that's a great example of, how can AI help me in everyday life? I mean, that's a
Right.
beautiful example.
For sure. Yep. And then I'll show two more things really quickly. So one is just the permission structure back here. So when I think about building a PowerPoint or a PDF, the typical access there is all or nothing. So if I'm building a deck, anybody I want to help me can see everything in it. And the only workaround there is you build your slides over in that vacuum and you build your slides there. And then it all comes to one person right before the meeting that has to Frankenstein it together, reformat, redo. Here, everybody's in one spot. So if you're an admin, you see everything. That's simple. But you can also do section-based permission. So now, I'm making this up, of course, but I can let Amanda into our whatever I'm in, my marketing update. When Amanda logs in, the only thing she sees is marketing. So she won't have access to HR, to the finances, to anything like that. She's just going to update her section. And because we have the brand kit and the guardrails, you don't have to worry about their PowerPoint chops or design skills. Like, it will look the same as all the other sections, which is professional and ready to go. So when it gets to your desk for review, it's a 9 out of 10, right? It's already looking great. Obviously, just like the AI, you'll always want to review and make sure the content is on point. But, easy to do that. I post that. Amanda gets a quick email and she can link right back to the section to make her updates.
Love it. Another question for you, Trey. What was the prompt you used to generate the content that is now under good stuff? What was that prompt?
Oh, so there's no prompt. You just click the button. It'll actually pull all that out for you. So we basically built like a custom prompt into it so that it'll always generate that what you need to know, the big takeaways, highlights, lowlights, etc. So that'll actually happen for you when you're generating it.
That is beautiful. Beautiful.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
So I don't want to derail your demo again, but let's say Anne-Marie's got them on fire, like they've been to the pep rally, they are just ready. So how long my board members are in the platform will it take me to set up?
Oh, I mean, we go really fast. So literally, I mean, we can turn these things around usually in a day, maybe two. But typically it's worth stating, like, the way that we onboard groups and charities is we want to make it really easy. We want to make this like a simple transition. And so we build your first presentation for you. So typically how that works in practice is that, a new customer will sign up, they'll give us their board deck that they used last time. We will essentially translate that into a ZEC. So now, yes, it's our best practices, it's our layout, our linking system, our brand kit, all of that stuff. Like, we want to make sure we're improving it, but it's your real reports, it's your content. And so what that allows for is then when the team gets in there, all they're doing is duplicating what we made and replacing the info for that first meeting. And so it's a really easy way to get started. And so that turnaround usually takes a day or two for us, but that's the only wait. Otherwise, you can start using this thing pretty much ASAP.
Okay. Robert, you relayed a story when I first met you about how you guys jumped from the for-profit sector into the nonprofit sector. Can you tell that story?
Yeah, I think for us at our first company, Moose Jaw, we sell North Face, Patagonia, brands like that. And I don't know if anyone on the call knows the backpacking space, but climbers take themselves very seriously. And our goal was to try to make it fun. And so if you go to Moose Jaw, you will see we're very foolish. As we started researching the giving space, we came to the conclusion that for the most part, giving to charity was seen as burdensome and guilt-ridden, right? If you think about the Sarah McLachlan commercial, like, you're sort of guilted into participating. And we thought, if we could replicate this playbook we had at Moose Jaw to try to make giving back fun, then maybe people, particularly younger people, would give more to cause and do it more frequently because it would be in their interest to do so. They would actually like it. So that was our goal. The first organization we met with was American Cancer Society, and they really laughed us out of the room. They said, "This is absolutely insane. We will never do this." And then 5 years later, we were their fundraising platform because I think the world turned. Now you can't go on social media and scroll for more than 10 seconds without reading about cause, because people, that's a now a part of people's lives instead of just in addition to it. So I know everyone on this call is in the nonprofit space, so I'm sort of preaching to the choir. But for us, the organizations on CrowdRise, and I think at GoFundMe and Classy, the organizations that are doing so well are the ones that are making their cause seem tangible. And that makes it so much more shareable and so much more interesting. And that's how these campaigns get spread.
I'm sure some people will ask this question. So what's your retention rate when a nonprofit in the nonprofit sector, when a nonprofit comes on, what's your percentage of keeping them past a year?
So we're pretty early. So I think it would be, so it's almost every nonprofit stays on the platform. Nobody leaves, but I think it's more fair to ask us that question probably a year from now,
Okay.
once we have real traction, because we have real traction, but I don't want my answer to be too hyperbolic. I'm
Got it.
sure organizations over time won't renew, but I think the very best part of Zach is how much organizations love the product. At our prior two companies, I think we really serviced our way into being relatively successful, and we have that same kind of relentless service at Zach. But the product itself has been really the feedback has been effusive. So it's easy to use. The board members like it, and again, this is all pre-AI. So I think once we have AI, now that we have AI launch, it's going to be even easier.
So let's say I'm a new client. If there are, because there have to be bumpy points. What are the
Yeah.
bumpy points? Like if, and it could have to do with the nonprofit, not with the platform. What are the bumpy points that a new user or a new organization might experience?
So our biggest problem is a good problem to have, but most organizations are now using Zech for multiple use cases. So we only market the board meeting, we only talk about the board meeting, but if for example, an organization starts using it for stakeholder updates, right? Sending something around to their major donors. What happened was, and tell me if I lose you here if I'm too in the weeds, that for the board meeting, you add your board members to the back end. So if you have 20 board members, you add them to the back end so that they can log in securely. If you have 1,000 stakeholders, you're not going to go ahead and do that. So we had to build a request access functionality so that you could send it to a broader list. That doesn't matter for the board meeting, but for a stakeholder update, it's monumentally important. So that's something that we had to build. So the pressure around additional use cases has been pretty intense for us. Trey, if you go back and show the homepage, we did not launch with a foldering system, because if you're doing 4 board meetings a year, you don't need to separate those, right? We had to launch this foldering system on the left-hand side of the page because so many organizations were using it for so many different use cases. So again, good problem to have, but it has put stress on the roadmap.
Yeah. Well, to your point, when I first saw this product, I thought, could managing the strategic plan itself be a use case? And I told myself no, because of the metrics issue. But I think your AI addition just changed that.
Yes, absolutely. I think, Trey, if you go, we're not going to show this, but we were not using, if you want to show the Zach leadership team, we were not using our own product for our own leadership team meetings, which we have tomorrow, until we saw another company do it. So I think that's pretty indicative of the momentum we have, and that it's been pretty affirming.
Yeah. At its heart, it's an information organization system, and it caters to human tendencies and our need for visualization.
Totally. I think at the beginning of the call, you were making the point that none of this matters if people aren't willing to engage and use it. And that's 100% true. You could have the greatest Zech ever, and if your board members are too busy to open it, none of it matters. So I think to Anne Marie's point about training your board, getting to them to feel engaged, getting them to feel like they're a part of the organization instead of just getting calibrated 4 times a year as a reporting function, is so important, not only for for the executive director and for the board, but for the organization generally, because usually these board members are pretty smart and can be additive if you're engaging with them and asking them to participate.
I gotta say, usually in demos, after like 17 minutes, I'm done, and we are almost at the hour.
Yeah.
So well done, you. You're very entertaining as well as great product. I want to let everyone know that we're going to produce this as a webinar and as a podcast, so you will get everything. And if it's a podcast, we'll put a link to the webinar in the show notes so that you can actually see the demo. We'll have links to for you to reach out to Zach directly. I do want to promote that Turnkey is having a CEO board chair retreat in September. If your CEO and board chair pairing would like to attend, you can reach out to us for that at Turnkey. And beyond that, I'm just really thankful for you guys, Robert and Trey, and thankful you developed the product. I think it was a hole in the market, to be sure, and I'm glad you jumped in it.
Thank you so much.
All right, Anne-Marie, thank you. And everyone, we will see you soon. Bye-bye now.